Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajak Acharya Astotar Srimad His Divine Grace Lacy Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shanmakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Ayodhya Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dhama Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Jai, Jai, Jai. Thank you so much, Gurudas Prabhu, and welcome to everyone for Srimad Bhagavatam class with Jayadvaita Swami and friends. It is Friday, October 20th, 2023. We're reading in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 25th chapter tonight, starting with text number 17. So very much eager to hear everyone's reading and commentary tonight. And let's see if Maharaj shows up. We never know. Thank you for being here. Hare Krishna. Maybe Gurudas Prabhu, you'd like to start us off with reading text 17?
I just realized that was muted. So sorry. All glories to my Guru Maharaj, Satsvarup Maharaj, and to all the devotees present. Text 17. Tada Purusha Atmanam Kevalam Prakrite Param Nirantaram Swayam Jyotir Animanam Akanditam. Translation. At that time, the soul can see himself to be transcendental to material existence and always self-effulgent, never fragmented, although very minute in size. Purport. In this state of pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one can see himself as a minute particle, non-different from the Supreme Lord. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the jiva, or the individual soul, is eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Just as the sun's rays are minute particles of the brilliant constitution of the sun, so a living entity is a minute particle of the Supreme Spirit. The individual soul and the Supreme Soul are not separated as in material differentiation. The individual soul is a particle from the very beginning. One should not think that because the individual soul is a particle, it is fragmented from the whole spirit. Mayavad philosophy enunciates that the whole spirit exists, but a part of it, which is called the jiva, is entrapped by illusion. This philosophy, however, is unacceptable because spirit cannot be divided like a fragment of matter. That part, the jiva, is eternally a part. As long as the Supreme Spirit exists, his part and parcels also exists. As the sun exists, as long as the sun exists, the molecules of the sun's rays also exist. The jiva particle is estimated in the Vedic literature to be 1/10,000th the size of the upper portion of a hair. It's therefore infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is infinite, but the living entity or the individual soul is infinitesimal, although it is not different in quality from the Supreme Spirit. Two words in this verse are to be particularly noted. One is Nirantaram, which means, quote, non-different, or, quote, of the same quality. The individual soul is also expressed here as Animanam. Animanam means infinitesimal. The Supreme Spirit is all-pervading, but the very small spirit is the individual soul. Akanditam means not exactly, quote, fragmented, but constitutionally always infinitesimal. No one can separate the molecular parts of the sunshine from the sun, but at the same time, the molecular part of the sunshine is not as expansive as the sun itself. Similarly, the living entity, by his constitutional position, is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Spirit, but he is infinitesimal. Hare Krishna. No better reminder than this type of verse where Prabhupada several times mentions the difference between the Supreme Soul, which is infinite, and the individual soul, which we cannot even, at least this poor jiva cannot even imagine how small he actually is. 1/10,000th of the upper tip of the upper portion of a hair. Can't imagine that. We can't even imagine where in our body is this tiny, tiny, tiny entity, the soul. But the Vedas assure us, Prabhupada and the Parampara assures us that that's our nature. We're not this body. And at the same time, we're this tiny, tiny, tiny driver inside the body, but the energy of the individual soul is spreading throughout the entire body. So our job as souls is to not be deluded. By not being deluded, that means we have to take shelter of Krishna. Mayi he shaguna mayi. If we don't take shelter of Krishna, then Maya is too strong and will overpower even the so-called scholar or powerful yogi. Maya is much, much, much greater. But if we seek out the shelter of Krishna, either through his words in the Bhagavad Gita, his form in the temple, his devotee, his prasadam, his service, we seek out those elements, will be protected from the onslaught of thinking, as the Mayavadis do, that the Supreme Soul and the individual soul are equal, or that everyone is the same Supreme Soul. Just right now I'm covered by Maya, but that's not the real me. I'm really supreme, but right now I'm covered by the material energy. It's a ridiculous proposal when seen in the light of day, but unfortunately for those that have embraced it, it's a very difficult viewpoint, and it's even more difficult to get out of it, which is why Prabhupada stressed so many, many, many purports. He stressed the Nirvisesha Sunyavadi, that we're eternally part and parcel of the Supreme, but we're tiny and he's infinite, but we're eternal. We don't get annihilated, we don't get merged, we're eternal. So anyway, to me, this is the highlight of that verse. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Panchatattva Prabhu has a hand up. Please go ahead.
Krishna says in 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Mamaiva Ankso Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha Manasa Stanindriyani Prakriti Stani Karshati. He describes the living entities in this material world as being his eternal fragmental parts, and Prabhupada glosses that word angsa as particle. So confirmed again by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita as elsewhere. And they're struggling in this material world due to their conditioning. They're struggling with their six senses, which include the mind. So that's further confirmation of what's described here. Prabhupada's probably referring to that content, as he often does when he's presenting his Bhaktivedanta purports. So big struggle, very tiny, completely covered. There's only one way out. That's Krishna consciousness.
I had a question. Maybe this is, maybe the question itself is evidence of how covered I am. But one of the sentences here towards the middle of the first paragraph, where he says, Mayavada philosophy enunciates that the whole spirit exists, but a part of it, which is called the jiva, is entrapped by illusion. Now, for some reason today, every time I look at that sentence, on face value, I think, what's the problem? The jivas are parts of the whole spirit. We're entrapped by illusion. And even though Prabhupada does go on to say why this philosophy is unacceptable, I'm having a problem with it. And I would love for the assembly to help make it clear for me so that maybe I could explain it to someone else.
Could you repeat what you're having trouble with? Because I wasn't catching it.
Sure. This sentence right here. Mayavada philosophy enunciates that the whole spirit exists, but a part of it, which is called the jiva, is entrapped by illusion. The problem that I'm having is that I'm not having a problem with that, the way he words it there, because that's very similar to at least my understanding today of the plight of the jiva.
I'll have to look at it again and see what the context is.
They're saying, but within that statement, the Mayavadis are concluding that there is nothing but one whole spirit, and that somehow part of that whole spirit, that one whole spirit, has come under illusion. And when that little part becomes free from illusion, it becomes joined with the one whole spirit, or it discovers that it's, merge. It discovers that it's part of one whole spirit. There's no division. There's no Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. There's no eternality to that position of being eternally fragmented, which Prabhupada talks about in the next.
I want to jump in when you're done.
Yeah. Mayavad philosophy enunciates the whole spirit is part of it, which is called the jivas entrapped by illusion. This philosophy, however, is unacceptable because spirit cannot be divided like a fragment of matter. That part, the jiva, is eternally apart. And it goes on to explain like that. They're saying he's not eternally apart. He's part of the one whole spirit, period.
Elsie Priya, did you want to say something?
Yes. So my ears pricked up when I read this part. Akhanditam means not exactly fragmented, but constitutionally always infinitesimal. So what I was musing on is that, I've often thought to myself that how can you divide up spirit into little, you're not dividing it, it's eternally separate. But and when you're using the example of the sun, there is no instance where any of the sun's rays are ever separate from the sun itself. I mean, they're not in the sun, but they're always connected to the sun. So how are they ever separated? Eternally separated. They're always connected. But then I was thinking, we have another example. All energy comes from the sun, right? But in this material world, we have examples of light and heat that aren't present, that are present in our lives when apparently the sun is not with us. you turn on a lamp. That energy that fuels a lamp originally comes from the sun, but somehow we're able to take advantage of it without the sun, the sun being connected to it in a clear, obvious way. So I'm thinking, wow, maybe that's how the jiva is. We're connected, we're from Krishna, but in material consciousness, we appear to be isolated and individual and separate, but in our actual spiritual nature, because Prabhupada is saying not exactly fragmented, we're always part of Krishna, but we're always these little parts that are not separate or fragmented, but we're still that's the whole Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, that we're simultaneously one with and different. So I was just thinking, we're not disconnected from Krishna, but we have the illusion of being disconnected in material consciousness, just the same way a lamp seems, the light of a lamp seems to be disconnected from the sun, but in actual fact, the light of the lamp has its source in the sun. So I don't know. There's something from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Shall I read it, or Surabhi Kunj wants to read it, or Gurudas Prabhu?
I can read it.
Okay.
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur translation of verses 16 to 18. When the mind is free of the contamination of lust and greed arising from the false identity of I and mine, and becomes pure without grief, without joy, and peaceful, the jiva sees himself different from ignorance, full of knowledge, devoid of coverings, subtle, undivided, and unattached, as well as sees ignorance devoid of power to affect him, by a mind endowed with jnana and vairagya, and principally with bhakti.
He has quite a bit of commentary too, but he sprinkles it with a lot of Sanskrit, which I'm unable to translate to a readable font. So it just makes things a little confusing.
I think the crux of the issue is how the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta, it expresses that differentiation versus Mayavad. Prabhupada's talking about how the Mayavadis see the individual spirits, the living entity, as becoming fragmented, and they're applying actually a material concept of fragmentation, that it becomes fragmented, and then when he realizes his position as the Supreme, he becomes part of the Supreme again. That's the difference. Now, Prabhupada says that you can't apply that here because the spirit cannot be divided like a fragment of matter. The jiva is eternally apart.
Yeah, I my understanding is there based on so many other times that Prabhupada has brought this up for clarity, but maybe just the way he's phrasing this sentence kind of brought me up short. Mother Lakshmana has a comment there.
Lakshmana Mataji says, maybe it's because when we see the ray of the sun, we don't see the million of small pieces, but with the jivas, we see the cover with the body.
But then without the material covering, we have spiritual forms. And those are distinct. I don't know, is there any situation in which the jiva is just a little, I guess in the Brahma Jyoti, when you go to the Brahma Jyoti, like, some do, you're just a little blob of light that's indistinguishable from other little molecules of light? How does that work? Guridas Prabhu has his hand up.
In stereo. I agree with Kendra Prabhu's assessment that this is a very rare instance when Srila Prabhupada is not extraordinarily clear about the differentiation between Vaishnava and Mayavadi understandings of things. I think, and what you said, Kendra, near the end of what you were saying is that we have to take it in context of all of Prabhupada's other very, very strong and brilliant distinctions between the Vaishnava and the Mayavadi understandings. If we run into a part where to our developing transcendental mind and senses, it doesn't make so much sense. It's generally we have to take it that, you know, when I become more mature in my understanding, this will make more sense. We have to give the Acharya the benefit of the doubt. And I know you're not opposing that. No one is opposing what I'm saying, but I'm just, it's not everything is as clear as everything else is. I also feel, looking at those sentences, that it's not explained as well as Prabhupada explains it in many, many other places. But I just, you know.
Yeah, one point that it just occurs to me, and I thank you so much, Panchatattva Prabhu and Tulsi Priya, for going through this, and thank you, Gurudas Prabhu, for feeling my pain in this regard. But it just occurs to me now that when our understanding of the Mayavad position is that the jiva is covered by illusion, but one question that it seems that their philosophy does not answer, at least to our satisfaction, is where does the illusion come from? If there's only one absolute truth, there's only one substance, one thing, then where do you get this other thing, this illusion thing that covers the one thing? That would make the Maya greater than the one thing, thus the name Mayavadi. It's not a very sound philosophy when you really take it apart. But anyway, I think I can sleep soundly tonight with all of your explanation.
Perhaps another way to read it, although I wouldn't attempt an edit of Prabhupada's sentence there, is that Mayavad philosophy enunciates that only the whole spirit exists. The fact that we are in a considering ourselves individual identities is part and parcel of that illusory existence. And when we realize, according to Mayavad philosophy, our actual spiritual identity as completely one with the Supreme Brahman, then there is no individual existence except the Supreme One. So maybe if you think of it that way, because I don't see that this as being a particularly troublesome passage, at least not for me. The whole spirit exists. That's their philosophy. That's it, and that's all that exists.
But then they say there's illusion.
Yeah, I know.
An illusion isn't a thing.
Maybe the 8th or 10th class Mayavadis will make a simple counter by saying, "Oh, this is the Supreme's Leela. It's the pastime of the Supreme. The Supreme acting in different ways." But then that sounds like a person. So anyway, it's just there's some contradiction, and I thought it was interesting that Prabhupada pointed out that they're making an estimation of the individuality they're making this description of the one spirit being cleaved into multiple fragments based on a material conception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because within that philosophical framework, there's not a clear distinction between the supreme spirit or the supreme person and the unlimited, infinitesimal subordinate persons, right?
Yeah.
I don't think subordination enters into the Mayavad philosophy at all.
Right. That's right. They say that even that thought of a separate existence is just illusion.
Because tat tvamasi.
Yeah. You are that, I'm a that, we are that, that is that.
I wouldn't normally do this, but I have a very short song that's based on this whole point, and it's sort of based on an American style of musical theater. It goes like this: "This is this, and that is that, and never the twain shall meet. Your head can never become your hat, your shoes are not your feet. This is this, and that is that, and never the twain shall meet. The body is not the soul, the part is not the whole. Our philosophy is complete."
He'll be here all week, folks, all week long.
There's a few comments left in the chat before we move on, I think.
Yeah, actually, I missed a comment by Saraswati Mataji where she said, "Pranams to all, stated here that the jiva is self-effulgent. So where Krishna's bodily effulgence is infinite and constitutes the Brahmajyoti, which is the destination of Mayavadis, the jiva's effulgence is minute like a spark." And then Praveen Krishna says, one devotee who is a scholar reading the verses directly of the acharyas, he says to me that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has only given the commentary of the verses, and the translations which we see is the contribution of Bhanu Swami Maharaj. And later he says, verses meaning the Sanskrit commentary of the acharyas. Kendra Prabhu said, I notice here that Srila Prabhupada really takes the Mayavadis to task in his purport, but Srila Vishwanath has a different audience in mind, it seems. Murari Gupta Prabhu says, maybe this is why it's called Achintya Veda Veda. And Tulsi Priya Mataji says, do the Mayavadis say illusion is a thing, or is illusion the absence of enlightenment? Godhead is light, nescience is darkness. Where there is Godhead, there is no nescience. Oh, and Murari Gupta Prabhu says, Mayavadis say the existence of illusion cannot be understood in the conditioned state, just as we say some things can't be understood in the conditioned state.
So if I'm illusioned, then I don't understand that I'm illusioned. I think I'm materially happy or materially distressed, but I don't understand the larger concept of being an illusion because I take material life as the all in all.
They still don't explain how the Supreme can come under illusion. It's
No.
absolutely no explanation whatsoever.
And only partially under illusion.
Fragments under illusion.
Fragmentally under illusion.
And being fragmented is an illusion. And then the whole thing is shot through with illusion.
Just read my Caitanya-caritamrta. He will explain everything.
I think it's interesting also that Prabhupada makes the point at least a couple of times that in the spiritual world, there is no need of electricity. I'm going back to my pet metaphor here, that there's no need of electricity or sun or moon because, you know, the sun in the material world is the source of all energies, or the, you know, immediate source. But in the spiritual world, everything is self-effulgent because everything is connected to Krishna. So if we you know, if in the material world we have all these sort of proxy or substitute sources of light, but really their only source is you know, is the sun. And so, you know, if everything were in its proper consciousness, there'd be no need for these proxy sources of light. Just in the same way that there's no need for any sources of light in the spiritual world because everything is already self-effulgent. But there's a material conception of light, which is, you know, what we use to see. And then there's light, which means knowledge and full understanding of our constitutional position. But I like the metaphor anyways.
Shall we get to the next verse?
Wait, Murari Gupta Prabhu has his hand raised.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. It's difficult since there's no illusion in the spiritual world. It's difficult for us to explain how the living entity is attracted to illusion. Of course, we have various explanations, but ultimately it's understood that it can't really be understood. So in the same way, the Mayavadis claim that what this illusion is can't really be understood when you're in illusion. And only when you're unillusioned and not existing as an individual is everything resolved. So these are kind of two areas where there can't be a clear explanation given for everyone's satisfaction, whether it's Gaudiya philosophy or the Mayavad philosophy, how the living entity comes in contact or is attracted to illusion in the first place. Anyway, that's a that's a consideration. Haribol.
Great to hear from you, Prabhu.
At least this is how they justify their position. And they'll challenge, well, how they challenge us, how did the living entity become attracted to illusion? And when it's in a pure state, in the spiritual world where there is no illusion. So that is their argument to disparage Vaishnavism.
It's a relatively small part of our philosophy.
Yeah.
Not really, you know, a deal breaker, so to speak, in any sense. Even
Well, you have to explain how we got here.
well,
Or
even
how is it that we're here? And that's a thorny topic.
yeah, Prabhupada basically says, and the parampara also echoes this, that not even important how we got here. It's important how to get out. And that for that, we should be, you know, mightily attentive at every step, but to spend time trying to agonize about how we got here, in different places, Prabhupada addresses that, but he also says that the main duty of the conditioned soul now is to get out. It's not to focus on how we got here. Am I, has anyone else heard Prabhupada say like that?
Say like what?
Like, not stressing the cause or the reason that we are here in the material world, but instead stressing it's so very, very important to approach a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, follow his instructions, serve him, and then he will, by his grace, allow you to get out of the material tabernacle.
Yes. Prabhu, I have spent a lot of time with this question because there's been so much argument about it. And Prabhu, what's his name? Jayadvaita Prabhu put together a whole PDF on the subject. And it's interesting because Prabhupada says, you know, worry more about how to get back. But the fact is that he's spoken quite a lot on what it means for us to be, you know, in the material world and how we got here and what is the nature of our presence here. And I feel like, you know, Marai Gupta Prabhu was saying we're attracted to illusion. I would frame it a little differently. It's like what in the translation here, the commentary from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, when the mind is free of the contamination of lust and greed arising from the false identity of I and mine. Well, the false identity. So that what is that false identity? The false identity is that somehow we're separate from Krishna, you know, because it's not that we don't have a real identity, but we have we're marginal, which means we always have this choice. I mean, every servant of Krishna has a choice, but it's our nature to be one way or the other. And for whatever reason, we just choose to be not in Krishna consciousness. It's not that, it's not like you know, like Maya Devi is you know, sashaying before us in the spiritual world, and we go, oh, I want that. It's just we put for whatever reason, we put ourselves first. We say, no, I don't want to serve. I want to be served, you know? And from there, boom, it's like instantaneous. The moment you have that, you know, you're not in the spiritual world when you have that thought. It's like, it's not even a matter of time. It's the thought itself puts you out of spiritual consciousness. So, you know, and Prabhupada has said, he's addressed this so many times, And whenever people bring up this whole idea of how we wound up in the material world, they completely ignore any mention of these explanations that Prabhupada has made, you know, but it just basically boils down to a choice, you know, and you don't need a temptation. You don't need, you know, you don't need an allurement. You don't need an attraction. You just do it because you can, you know? So I don't know.
The Mayavadis have an issue with how the jiva falls from his eternal position. But taking the whole package, the whole Mayavadi package, you see that the same persons who are making this a sticking point believe that there's no such thing as Bhagavan. There's no supreme personality. He has no hands. He has no arms. He has no legs. He has no friends. When he speaks the Bhagavad Gita, he's speaking as some, you know, fragmented, illusioned mode of goodness, conditioned soul speaking from the mode of goodness. Their whole pitch is full of holes and full of offenses. And I'm sorry, I know that on elevated subject matters, we have to take these things very seriously. And I'm sure if there was a Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur present, or His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami present, he would tear this, you know, argument presented by the Mayavadis apart into little pieces. But from my limited perspective, I can't take their complaint very seriously when I see that the rest of their philosophy is so damaged. It's so damaged. When Krishna says, Mamai Vangso Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, the Mayavadis are saying, he's not really saying that. Or he doesn't really mean that. When he says, Manmanabhava Mabhakto Mandyaji Mam Namaskuru, the Mayavadis are saying, it's not to the Supreme, to Krishna we're supposed to surrender, but to the unborn within Krishna. They have a whole pile of reckless and inaccurate distortions of the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we're supposed to hearken back to that issue and make that the sticking point, how the jiva came to the material world. When the people making the complaint have this kind of philosophy and have brought the world to such darkness, in the introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam, I think that's where it is, Prabhupada points out that this Mayavad philosophy, this impersonalism, it's an impetus for sense gratification. Because if Krishna's words don't matter, if there's no supreme person, if there's no relationship, if we're all God, then whatever we do is ultimately fine. It's complete. It's just it's an impetus for sense gratification. It's damaged the whole world. I really appreciate that the second verse of Prabhupada's Pranam Mantra points out that that's what he was after, defeating impersonalism and voidism. Even Sripad Sankaracharya chastised them. What is that? Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda Mudamate. The rest of his Nayana Yarakshati Dukra Incarnate, that verse that he spoke. But they're adamant.
I have to say I was very struck and shocked when I first read how Prabhupada described that one who took up the Mayavadi ideas, Mayavad philosophy, his spiritual path was infinitely dark. By far the most challenging, not for lifetimes, was a Mayavadi going to even begin to get the hint or the sense of devotional service. And so, like you were saying, Pachatattva Prabhu, that's why he so strongly preached Nirvisesha Sunyavadi, to break us from the habit of impersonalism. Because there's just nothing to be gained. It's just all loss. It's all bad to worse.
Looks like there's some comments in the chat.
Yes, Saraswati Mataji has a question. Why did Lord Shiva, the greatest Vaishnava, descend to preach Mayavad philosophy, which kills individualism and stated we are all Narayan when not in Maya?
Krishna says he told Shiva to take the form of Shankaracharya. So it was under the divine will of Sri Krishna. Shiva was following his orders by assuming the form of Shankaracharya and leading people away from the Vedic conclusions. I can't right now think of where that is in the Bhagavatam. It's very, very clearly stated in the Bhagavatam. I think it's the same part where Prabhupada outlines the life history of Shankaracharya.
Yeah, there's some mention of Sankaracharya's mission to bring persons back to respect for the Vedic scriptures by an impersonal understanding, because at that time, the philosophy of Voidism or Buddhism had become widespread. And so and Lord Buddha, his advent, according to Prabhupada's teachings, was to stop animal sacrifice in part. And when he was questioned about the Vedic scriptures, because when Lord Buddha was questioned about the Vedic scriptures, because there's some allowance for animal sacrifices, he said he rejected the Vedas. So this is a, Bashandi philosophy, but it was to serve a particular purpose at a particular time. And then Sripad Shankaracharya appeared and defeated the Buddhist philosophy. And then we have further acharyas coming and establishing Dvaitavad, qualified dualism, qualified dualism, and so forth, until Lord Chaitanya comes with the Chintya Veda Veda Tattva philosophy. very rough outline.
Kendra Prabhu says, to help Kali Yuga progress. No. Tulsi Priya Mata says, he was under orders. And Saraswati Mata says, was it to stop sacrifice of animals? And I think devotees have answered that that was Lord Buddha's role. And Murari says to restore faith in the Vedas. That was Shankaracharya's mission. And then Saraswati says, thank you for the clarification. And Praveen says, our individuality explains how we chose to leave the spiritual realm. Even if we consider it as an illusion within the spiritual realm, how is that the Supreme Impersonal has made any choice since then? Is no individuality, since there is no individuality, hence how the illusion, we have to depend that we are illusioned enough to be unable to know how we became illusioned, but we can say, however illusioned we are, that we chose to be illusioned because of our minute free will. The Brahmajyoti has no free will or even any will. And Tulsi Priya reacts to Praveen by saying, good points, Praveen Krishna Prabhu. And Kendra says it's time for kirtan.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Gurudev, Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Brahmasa Parivajacharya Astotara Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Brahmasa Parivajacharya Astotara Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Goti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Siddhartha Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Seva Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Go Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopika Radhakun Samakun Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Ramadan Ki Jai. Shri Navdvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Gunamaya Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samveda Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to the some devotees. Jai Sri Guru Guranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories.
Jai. Thank you so much, Krishna Kante Prabhu, and thank you everyone for such lively discussion on a Friday evening. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
Jai,
Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai,
Jayadvaita Swami and friends Ki Jai.
Jai.
It's Friday night. We have to have fun somehow.
Good, clean fun, as Maharaj might say.
In Ukraine now?
You'd have to check his itinerary on his jswami.info to see.
Okay, I thought I heard mention of that on Wednesday.
So Rabbi Kunj says,
Sure.
yes, he's in Ukraine.
Ukraine. Very heavy ball.
All right. Hare Krishna. Thank you again, everyone.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.